along the series, we've always been very persistent in that you have to think different, you have to think out of the box. A lot of people that you listen to will say to you, you have to actually jump out of the box. It's not so much about thinking, but about jumping out of the box. So taking risks which are 100 times bigger than the risk that you will be taking before. And this session would be about thinking the impossible at the time that the products I'm going to be talking to you came into market. I'm going to be asking you a few questions. We are going to do a practice session, and then you're going to be doing some pitching for me, baby, which would be fun. So, let's think about, okay, so Ben and Jerry's. Who hasn't eaten Ben and Jerry's? No! I will give it to you, but I had it last night. I'm quite a regular consumer of Ben and Jerry's, and there's a reason why. Who knows the story behind Ben and Jerry's? Good, so if I tell the story, no one is going to say I'm telling it wrong, because you started from zero, means I'm right. Ben and Jerry were friends in middle school, like it's called in the States, and for one reason or another, they found out that they didn't have a purpose in life. They didn't know what they were going to do with their lives. But one of them learned to make ice cream. So it's just one of those things that you do at the end of the 70s, what you do with your life, you learn to make ice cream. And they used the quirkiness of the life and their mind thinking to make different ice cream. So can anyone tell me what makes Ben and Jerry's different?
The mad names.
The mad names, which is out of the mad recipes, isn't it? Before Ben and Jerry's came into the market, what would you eat in terms of ice cream?
Vanilla.
Vanilla. Strawberry if you were adventurous. Mint chocolate chip in the 90s, wasn't it? Before they came into the market, it used to be Wall's ice cream, wasn't it? And Contessa or whatever it was, Viennetta is Contessa in Spain. It was a kind of the exotic ice cream that you will have after dinner. What they did is they actually they have funny ways to make funny recipes. So, and they gave them strange names, and I've seen programs about going to the factory. Anyone can go to the factory and try any recipes, and then give them names behind. And behind the taps, there is a story about the recipe and the name, so that you engage more with the ice cream that you buy. It's probably twice more expensive than your ordinary ice cream. But I still prefer to pay twice for this one than any other chocolate chip ice cream. And it's because they're different, they're original, they're exciting, and I like them. But in America, the way in which they did it is they set up a shop, and then they went really heavy on the marketing. Just the two of them, the two guys. And they things like cinema nights in the wall of a petrol station, and they will go and sell ice cream. They're quirky ice cream. So they actually attracted the youngsters that were going to the cinema. They were going to the customer. They were not waiting for the customer to go to the supermarket, to the freezer area to buy their ice cream. They went to them. And the other thing that they did, because in those days there was no Facebook or likes in Facebook, is they did competitions and record breaking. So one of them was they made the biggest sundae in the state where they were in Pennsylvania, where they were actually based. And that's the way in which they started marketing themselves. So it was a word of mouth. And they did you know that? So in those times that Facebook and Twitter and social media wasn't there and big global campaigns, this guy did it their way. They were original and they went to the market. So that's how they entered the very stagnated sector that was the ice cream market. And who eats Müller yogurts? Who used to eat yogurts before Müller? I've heard, that might be wrong, I've heard that yogurts were associated with women dieting when they first came into market. And Müller, which was set up over 100 years ago, did the same thing for 70 or 80 years, until one of the family members took over the business and decided to try new things. So they use recipes, but they try new products to attract the family stable. So not just the woman who was dieting, so making it a little bit of fun. And by putting fruit and yogurt together, made it a lot of fun for children and youngsters who saw yogurt really boring as it was. What they also did is they went really heavy on the marketing campaign. So again, they invested a lot of money in the marketing. And we're talking about the 70s, when it was really difficult. It's not as easy as it is nowadays, with the internet, social media, platforms everywhere. It was in the 70s and the 80s, so it was very, very difficult. But they did it by using recipes that they have and creating something new. And one thing that I will show you later on is about being original and combining this little bit key message that I'm giving you. So, Frank said, I'm going to be talking about my own personal experience. Before I was a business support, innovation guru, business incubation manager, whatever you call it, I used to be an AMT girl. So back in the 90s, you might have seen me in Corn Market or outside the Westgate selling you coffee. Or tea, if you really wanted tea. And I did that for a couple of years. And I did it at the time that the brothers set up the business. So AMT stands for, well, the brothers are called Alastair, Alan, and Angus. Angus is no longer live. McCallum topping, and that's why it's AMT espresso, obviously. I mean, they've gone through a lot of rebranding, a lot of formula to formalize the coffee. They've gone through being the first ones, bringing fair trade coffee into coffee stouts and so on. What the brothers did, I don't know whether you remember when they started AMT in Oxford. Did you remember buying coffee from them at all? Oh my God. Did you all drink tea in the 90s? What they did is, they did it themselves. The three brothers were business students from Oxford Brookes University, and they were from Seattle. So they brought the culture, the coffee culture, into Oxford from Seattle. And it was before Costa broke into Oxford, was before Starbucks was a mega coffee chain that we know now. So AMT was actually in Oxford before any of those branches opened in Oxford City. And they were mad brothers. They really were lovely, lovely chaps. But they were determined to make it happen because it wasn't happening in Oxford. And the only concern that they had was the cost. And as far as I remember, the only place that you could really buy coffee was a vending machine. And the vending machine in the hospital or at the park or somewhere like that will sell you a coffee for 50p, 60p maximum. They started selling coffee. Probably we used to sell cappuccino for £1.70 or £1.90. You know, it's over £2 now, and it's the cheapest that you can buy. Starbucks and Costa, all the rest are more expensive. And there's a reason behind that, which I'll tell you why. But what they did is they positioned themselves on the way. So you were going to work into the city centre by the bus station to begin with, so Westgate and Corn Market, and they were there. It was so handy. They were right on your face, and the smell of coffee would draw you into them. What they did at the same time is they talked to the guys at the station, because it was a market that wasn't at the time explored, and there was nowhere else that you could buy a market apart from one of the croissanteries that were at the train station in Oxford. So they went into that niche. I worked for them in 95, 96. They started in 94, so that's 18 years later. They still have retained the train station market because it's a niche market. And if they have expanded, they've expanded to places where there were transit places, so either airports, not bus station, train stations, or they only retain the two carts on the streets here because that's where they started, that's where they were based. The message is, again, you have to go to your customers. you know, people were not thinking about paying a lot of money for coffee. They had to learn the whole coffee culture. Unless you were going to an Italian restaurant, and as a treat you will have a cappuccino with a little amaretto biscuit. Here, they were there, accessible for you. A lot more expensive than tea, probably, if you bought it in a tea shop, which was your other alternative to do something along those lines, to buy a tea to go. But they were there. How do you think they make profit? And they have retained the profit that they make, not expanding as big as other coffee places have. Go on.
Low overheads?
Exactly. So their overheads are minimum. They pay the personnel, but they don't pay any overheads that Starbucks or Costa or Coffee Republic pay. They have the car space, and they have an agreement with where they are, with the stations, with the airport. And that's how they make a lot of money. And that's why they retain that position. And they do make a lot of money because coffee costs very, very little. The margin is huge. So the message is, again, bring into your customer, make it accessible and easy for them to buy. They didn't go out marketing. I mean, they didn't go crazy on marketing. They didn't have the money to go crazy on marketing. In fact, they didn't have a lot of money. And there are a lot of arguments about that. But they were there on our face, and that's how they did it in Oxford. So I'm bringing my own personal experience with AMT, not Starbucks, no Coffee Republic. This is the one. It was there for you. It's all my props now. I've eaten them and drank them all, so I'm a happy person.